Hey everyone, welcome back to Work Right with Rich, the show where we get into the honest, unfiltered side of what it really takes to make work, well, work. I'm Richard Farmer, your host and Asia Managing Director at CNC. Today we're looking at a shift a lot of CEOs are quietly making behind the scenes. And no, it's not as scandalous as it sounds. We're talking about fractional leadership. You know, bringing in a seriously experienced leader, but without signing their life away on a permanent contract. It's like leadership on demand. You get the expertise, the experience, the steady hand, the calm in chaos energy, but only for as long as you actually need it or your business needs it. To help me get into this, I brought in someone who has basically lived inside the engine room of leadership for the past 2 decades, my good mate, Gerard. Gerard spent more than 20 years working with CEOs, boards, and founders, you name it, across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. He's a seasoned chief of staff and HR leader who understands people, operations, and strategy at a level only someone who's done this hard yards can. Gerard, mate, welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rich. Good to see you.
So, Gerard, you know, in your words, tell us about you. Give us a little bit of an introduction.
Spent 20 years in the people business. I think in 2 of those companies I was working alongside you, which was good fun. Then stepped out, took on a chief of staff role where I was sitting, working directly with the CEO across a conglomerate that turned over about $500 million a year, covering people, process, projects, and productivity. Then after that, I went and set up Caledonia Resources. You know, we're a founder-led Singapore and UAE-based consultancy that delivers fractional leadership, HR consultancy, and digital transformation.
Wow, fantastic. And what made you, I suppose, start Caledonia? What was the gap you saw?
Being able to help not just one CEO, but look at different businesses and help them tackle their problems was something that really appealed to me. So using the methodologies that I use and implementing frameworks, setting up companies for success, it was interesting to see that, a lot of CEOs were very stretched, and in being stretched, they needed, the assistance of someone to come in to work with them that they can trust to help bring their businesses forward. And so that's really why Caledonia Resources was born.
That's great. And I'd love to dig deeper as well on what it's like working in the Emirates and around Abu Dhabi and so forth. But I think let's start right at the start. There's going to be a lot of listeners. A lot of our listeners are HR leaders, they're entrepreneurs, but they might be hearing the word fractional for the first time. So what is a fractional leader?
Yeah, so very, very simply put, if you talk about fractional versus talking about a full-time executive, if you're talking about fractional, it means you get a part of me. So fractional, a part, versus full-time, you get all of me. So really with this whole fractional piece, traditionally people that work in a fractional environment, they would work on a retained basis. They would normally do something like half a day or a day a week, or agree a certain number of hours with their client. Usually you would sort of run up to 3 clients at a time, and they could be across different industries. And so, that was another motivator for me to do this. There's never really a dull moment. So one day you could be tackling and implementing, an applicant tracking system. So you've got your HR hat on. The next moment you might be working in an operational piece to implement KPIs to get the business working and ticking over better. So it's quite varied in that regard for what I do. Obviously versus a full-time permanent role where you're effectively tied to that employer in a permanent basis 5 days a week.
Right. Fantastic. Very well explained. And I suppose what's the difference between fractional, though, and say a lot of people see it as it could be just contracting or freelancing. What makes it fractional?
Let's say it as it is. I mean, fractional and freelance is one and the same.
Okay.
I think the big difference is if you're looking at fractional versus interim, or fractional basis versus temp or contract. If you're doing temp or contract or an interim gig, it's usually a full-time assignment for a particular project to solve a particular problem. So you might be there for 3 months or 6 months if you're doing on that basis. And again, Rich, fractional is as it is. It's a lot more flexible in the engagement that you would have with a client. So you might go in there half a day a week. You might go in there 2 days a week. So that's really why that sort of term was coined. And, in a way, why it's gaining some traction now is because instead of hiring a senior guy on hundreds of thousands a year, you basically say, okay, well, I want to get that same guy, but let's say I use him for half a day a week. He can still take my business to where I needed to get to without him being in my business full time, basically running that whole shebang. So it has its merits there, and a lot more organizations are looking at it and tapping into it for sure.
Yeah. This is coming from my lens, is like, how do you manage your client around this fractional piece? As I think that's one of the things that I'm hearing about, is how do you actually educate the client around fractional, like how to work with me? You've got me for half a day, so make sure you don't book meetings that day. Like what, I mean, that might be a secret sauce. You don't have to tell us if it is, but how do you manage the client?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I think you need to identify what the problem is. Is it the fact that the CEO is overstretched? Is it a specific project? Is it a particular area that needs turning around? So what you would do is you would normally do a discovery piece of work to obviously understand what that is. Then what I tend to do is put effectively a statement of work in place. So this is the problem. This is what we need to solve, and this is what I will commit to do to actually rectify it. Now, the way that it works well is that I would typically send a small report through at the end of a particular week or end of a particular period to give updates on the problem that we're trying to solve. And so, if you've got a very experienced guy coming in that you've given a piece of work to deliver on, and you're getting updates on it, you can see it moving forward and you can see it getting delivered, then that tends to be a lot of value. And it sort of is a bit of a relief to some CEOs, because, yourself, Rich, sitting in a CEO or an MD role, you're basically there at the top making all the decisions without really any direct support. So to have someone that you could view as, say, a peer, or someone that's been there and done that, to deliver something for you, it can be quite a relief in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. And also from a senior executive, you're dealing with another senior executive. So they're not having to actually like lead, manage you. They're like, this is what you're going to deliver, and then you can hold you accountable that against the SOW. And I suppose as you get to know the business more, you get to know more things that you can obviously help solve and drive forward. But you kind of mentioned there that, fractional, you've been doing this now with Caledonia Resources for a couple of years now, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll be 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gone fast. So within that 4 years, how have you seen the fractional model grow up? Like, how have you seen it changing? Is it better understanding? Is it new tools? What have you seen from that? Like, how does it compare?
It's different in different locations, really. I mean, if you look at the UK and the US, for example, it's been around for some time. If you look at an SME or if you look at an established corporate, they're getting a lot of value from engaging with fractional talent. Why? Because they know how to engage with them, therefore adds a lot of value. If I look at a market where I'm doing a lot of work at the moment, which is the UAE, that movement, it's evolving. So there are a few different groups. There's a group called Fractional Dubai. It's a growing directory or a group of people that offer, everything from marketing to sales to COO to CTO to CFO. And, obviously Caledonia, we're part of that ecosystem now. So we're growing across, clients in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So I think that's really due to the steep growth in the economy. So therefore, fractional talent's easy to engage with. And we're seeing high demand. If we look at Singapore, this is a really interesting one, Rich. So very recently, the deputy CEO of Workforce Singapore, his name's Brandon Lee. Basically, he's with the Singapore government. So he's rolled out this new initiative. It's a bit of a mouthful, so let me try and get it right. It's called the Alliance for Action on Empowering Multi-Stage Careers for Mature Workers. Right. Yeah. So that.
I'm sure there's an acronym somewhere.
That's right. That's right. So basically, the Singapore government are now looking at fractional as well. And if you've seen the Business Times of late, there's been a few articles on that. Some of the pioneers. There's a guy called Mark Mullinex. He's with the fractional directory. So they're actually rolling out this particular pilot. It's a fractional leader integration program. So we're going to see in Singapore now, so people that maybe are stepping away from the corporate world want to launch a fractional career, they can get exposure to it by looking at that. There's also a chap called Moritz Kafsek. He runs Portfolio Careers. I don't know if you've ever dealt with him.
Yeah, I've met Moritz, yeah.
Yeah. So he's a cracking guy. So he's got, various WhatsApp groups across Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, India. And it's really a great resource, if you want to know about some legal issues, or if you want to tackle a marketing problem or whatever it is, this particular group are able to help out. So to answer your question, the movement is evolving, it is developing, and I think if you look at it, 15 years ago when I was in Singapore, I was one of the first foreigners working for Adecco, under the guidance of Lin Ung. And so Adecco was the world's largest staffing agency. And so I was both new to the company and the country, but for the life of me, I couldn't understand why there was an aversion to people working on a flexible or a temp or a contract basis. And, it was all about face and perception here in Asia. And so people wanted the title, they wanted to be directly working with a particular organization. But, I think since COVID times, things have changed and people are looking at work differently now. So I think there's a lot more openness to both working on a contract, a temp, an interim, but also on the fractional side.
Totally agree. We're seeing at CXC, and what we do is contingent workforce, and every day we see the rise in contracting. What it is, I think, in Asia, it was always seen as blue collar, oil and gas. It may be technology or contractors, because they work on projects, but we've seen it go up the value chain. And an interesting piece of information that we saw: the role that's growing the most in contracting in North Asia. So that's taking in Hong Kong, China, Japan, Korea, that across those verticals, is actually HRDs.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because if you imagine you're going through a large transformation and you're a mid SME business or a certain size, to hire, as you said, a very senior HRD that knows how to do the structure transformation, they can't maybe afford it, or they might not have the role for a certain amount of time. They're not big enough, right? So when you're bringing in that skill set, so we've seen that rise as well. And we've seen contingent rise, definitely Malaysia, India. It is seen now as that opportunity to bring in talent. But I think, what do you see as the benefit for the business? Not going off topic, but what's the benefit of the business bringing in that fractional leader? Like, where would you kind of say that that's the key benefit for a business?
Well, the beauty is that you don't have the ramp up of, I'm talking really about fractional leaders, those sort of COO type guys or HROs and things like that. Usually, if you're hired on a permanent basis, and indeed I have been hired in a permanent basis in some of these job types before, there's a 90-day ramp up. So you've got to get under the bonnet, understand what the business is, report back to the CEO on your 90-day plan about the strategic initiatives, and then obviously get those planned out and then effectively deliver those. And there's a fair bit of strategic sort of input required into setting that up, because you're there effectively for the long term. I think the beauty from a fractional perspective is it's normally tied to a project or tied to a particular initiative. So let's say retention was too high in a particular organization. So you get the fractional in to understand why and how. But the beauty is, Rich, that the difference at the moment with why fractional is really, really taking off is twofold, really. You may have seen a while back in the news in the likes of Saudi, the big pure play strategic consultancy groups were going in there, charging an arm and a leg, providing very fancy strategic plans and whatnot. But what's actually happened off the back of that was not so much was getting executed and delivered. And so I think where people are going these days when they're looking at fractional talent is they want something executed. So I think the speed to implement it, I think having a clear view about what you want as the outcome, and then you've got a senior leader basically working under you to go ahead and deliver that. So I think all of these areas are definitely the reasons why people are looking at choosing fractional leadership these days.
Yeah. And I can see that why they're looking at it as a gap in their organization, because, we've seen the consultant comes, as you mentioned, they'll give you the strategy, but they don't implement it. But as a fractional worker going in, if you want to get more fractional work, you want to deliver it. So you've got skin in the game in some instance, because you are your brand, right? Because yeah, as a fractional worker, like you're not behind a large consulting company. It's yourself going in there and working on different things. And just on that, taking another step, you mentioned working on 3 different companies. Like, so you could be working to 3, you could maybe even 4. How do you kind of manage that in terms of like the cultural piece and kind of, breaking it down or being able to get across the different businesses? Because as we all know, the companies are so different. They have different systems. They all think they're different, but often they are in their systems, the way they do things, the acronyms they use. Like, how do you get to the speed so quickly?
I guess this is the beauty about having worked in industry for 20 odd years. You know, the reason I specifically said 3 and not 5 is that I would typically go ahead and do something like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. You know, you need days to do your admin, you need days to get ready for the next time you're going in to see the client. For me, I always work in-house. I always go to the client site, and therefore I'm not disturbed. I'm working on their platform, on their systems, on their Slack piece or whatever, and I'm basically getting the work done. So I think in that regard, I can juggle that quite well. I do hear of others that might offer a number of hours to more than 3 clients. I think when you're doing that sort of piece, Rich, you're sort of looking more at an advisory role or, board advisor. And so therefore you're literally speaking to the CEO or to the leadership team to talk about what needs to be done rather than executing on it. So this is why specifically I said three clients. It can be across the same industry. It can be across different ones. For me, I've always enjoyed the variety of work. Hence the reason, I find that working across a number of different industries works out quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. And 3 is the magic number, as they say.
It is.
It is. It's perfect. And so on that, like, as you've had that exposure to those 3 different companies, and that you've worked across APAC, Middle East, Europe, so they could be in 3 different regions. So do the reasons, why companies go fractional differ? But also, how do you see, is there any surprises around the way they work? Like, you must be able to sit there and do the comparison after all of your time in Asia, now in the Middle East, but also from Europe.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess this comes back to you asking me about how you can actually get things done. I think, and a couple of people have said this, I don't know if it's true or not, but having a decent level of EQ is as important as the IQ, because being able to understand the CEO, his needs, what needs tackling, how it needs to be tackled, without effectively stepping on people's toes. You're going in there to make change and make things work. So you need to do it in the right sort of way. So I do find that there are different nuances depending whether you're in Asia or the Middle East or Europe. But as I said earlier, I think that because businesses have a need, they're literally engaging with you because they need something fixed. And so it's the fact that you're coming in, you're basically committing to executing and getting things done on behalf of the CEO, that normally it's a fairly warm welcome. And, if you can show the results fairly quickly, then that works well. I remember, one of the CEOs, when I was in a permanent job, he showed me a spreadsheet of 40 strategic items that he needed tackling. And I said, how many of these have you covered off? And he said, 4, Gerard. And it wasn't the fact that he couldn't do them himself, but he was just so busy with everything else in his business. And so I worked through the 40 different initiatives over close to a 2-year period. And, it's just basically taking weight off the CEO's shoulders. So you're effectively what's called in the business a force multiplier. You're basically there to help accelerate, get things done, implement, and move the business forward.
Yeah, I love that. I think some days I could definitely do one myself. And I think, the chief of staff position as well has been rising right through. It's very poignant in large. Well, I first saw it in banking in Australia, but I know it's a critical position in America and in Europe, and we've seen it growing, right, as that chief of staff position. You have your CFO. So what's the difference between a COO and a chief of staff for people?
Very good question. This comes up an awful lot actually, because I tend to find that I sort of flip-flop between the two when I'm working with clients. So a chief of staff's quite an interesting one. So you report directly to the CEO, as does a COO. But in most cases, you don't own anything. You're not responsible for a P&L. You're not responsible specifically for headcount, but you are responsible for making sure that the whole mechanism works and everything comes together and everything gets delivered. So, a chief of staff role is quite interesting because a chief of staff, although not formally, there are a number of different bands for it. So one end of the spectrum for a chief of staff, you could get someone that's an EA, so an executive assistant, helping, just delivering on behalf of what the CEO is after. On the other end of the spectrum, you do get people that are sort of a COO level, and effectively they're delivering more strategic initiatives and responsible for, more complex parts of the business. But what I tend to say to people, just to keep it very simplistic, is the chief of staff is responsible for driving things forward, making things work. But the COO themselves, they own the P&L, they own the headcount, they own the technology stack. All of these things they're responsible for.
Yeah. So the chief of staff is in the truest sense the fixer. So coming in to fix and to make sure that things move things out the way. And from your experience of working with CEOs, because as you said, I love the IQ. EQ is more important than IQ. So I think that's right, because, there's a lot of personality, there's a lot of ego around a CEO. So when you come in, where do you see that you can sometimes just come in and go, I can give you breathing room here? Like, can you actually sometimes, do you have to take a step back and go, I can't go to solution mode straight away? Or I think they need to see a coach because they're off down the wrong route.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think you mentioned a word there, Rich, that really does sort of sum things up, because you are going in as a coach, as an advisor. Effectively the CEO has responsibility for everything, for all the decisions in a company, and now he's basically got a running mate that he can bounce ideas off of. We're trying to do this, we want to do this, we want to implement that. How would we go about it? What would we do? Blah blah blah, and then you would sort of come to a consensus there. So typically, it is a bit of coaching involved, but I think in order for the delivery to be a success, you really do need to spell out and confirm what that statement of work or what problem you're going to solve, and have clarity on that. Because I think once both parties are clear on it, then hopefully you pass that out to the greater business, so they're wondering who this guy sitting in the corner doing the work is. And everyone's clear on what's actually looking to be achieved there. And I think once people are aware that they've got an extra pair of hands that's got 20 years of experience helping to pull the business forward, the buy-in tends to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, because you've got the most senior person sponsoring you, so they've got to introduce you. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. Have you ever come across where, a board has brought in a chief of staff for a CEO, and he or she's kind of gone, who's this person? Have you been in that instance yet? Because I can see that happening, where they're like, you need help, here is someone, and that could be a different dynamic.
So actually, one of my first fractional gigs actually was similar to that. So what had happened is that the group CEO had spoken to the Singapore CEO, and he said, hey, if you were able to tap onto someone who's got 20 years of experience and use them as a sounding board and look to bring your business forward, would you be interested? He was very much a grown-up, so he didn't have any ego. He said, He said, that would be absolutely great. He said, let's go ahead with it. In some cases, that's what happens. It's not replacing that CEO by any means, because you're there for a short period of time. But there are other examples where this does actually happen. And this is more in the private equity world, Rich. So this is called, and there's a specific term for it. It's called an operating partner. And what would happen is that the business would use one of their teams. So it's normally from they've got a portfolio of clients they've invested into. They're looking to build them up, make them better, so that they can then obviously cash it out and do well from it. So what they do in some cases is there's specific guys that they will say, okay, we're going to parachute this guy in to be our COO, or we're actually going to parachute this guy in to replace the CEO. And typically they would stay there for, 6, 9, 12 months to get things fixed. But that's not my modus operandi, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's okay. But I just thought it was an interesting dynamic, and we've seen it with especially with high growth businesses. You nailed it when it's like kind of private equity or business, but I see a lot of boards and I've worked with them where they're wanting to support people, but they also don't know how to bring in help, right, or support, or like it's okay to give this away and let someone else deliver it and run with it. So I think that's really clear. But being able to give yourself as myself as a leader thinking time, or going, I'll prioritize this person can deliver this in a short amount of time. You mentioned something earlier, and just more like how long is usually a fractional piece of work? Do you often see it? Could it be a year, 2 years, or is it is it usually more short term?
So typically the longest engagement I've had has been a year. And then with that engagement, I had to sit with the CEO and tell him, I think that, the knowledge that I've imparted on you now, Edwin, is enough. That, you can run this you don't need the support anymore. And so I think for a growing and developing CEO, it was useful to have, someone to support them, to give the advice, to challenge them with their sales pipeline, or, how they were hiring or what have you. And so, a year for me was sort of the longest engagement. I tend to have found that the sweet spot is sort of 6 months.
Yeah.
Because typically to get something implemented correctly and to deliver it and then to hand it over is really what I'm all about. So I'm there basically to put myself out of a job, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You're going to get out of a job.
Yeah, so we'll go in there. For example, if there's a particular high level of hiring, let's say they've had an investment of 20 million and you've got the go ahead and hire 35 members of staff. I've come from a people background, but I'm not going to do the headhunting for them. But I will sit with the CEO and the COO or the CTO and coach them on how to interview, and talk to them about setting up scorecarding, and talk to them about structured interview processes. And yourself, when you're looking at hiring 30, 35 people in a short period of time, you're seeing hundreds of CVs, you're interviewing, tens and tens of people. And, if you want to beat your competitors, you need a number of things all lined up. You need how you're selling your business. So you're going to hire that person instead of Goldman Sachs hiring them. You're going to have to ask them intelligent questions and then get other people in your business to recheck those questions that have been asked. And then in your scorecard, you should have it so that you're going to be unbiased in regards to making those hires. So with all of that, Rich, and going through a process, you can get that done within 6 months. But typically for me, I look to identify what the problem is, go in there, tackle it, deliver it, pass it on, and then head out.
Yeah, I like it. It's great. And I suppose that leads us to what is the most common misconception you see in probably the thoughts of fractional leaders? What do you like? What's not true?
Yeah, no. So that's quite an easy one, to be honest with you, because I think a common misconception is that fractional leaders, they're predominantly semi-retired, which isn't true. So for some pockets of fractional work, such as a fractional COO or a fractional CHRO, which I do, it's good to have a few grey hairs. It's good to have the experience there. But there was an individual that was recently interviewed in the Business Times, who's doing fractional chief marketing. I think she's only in her 20s, but she's basically working with a number of different clients, delivering and getting good responses there. So yeah, I think the main thing is that they think that it is for retirees, which is definitely not. I think it's more of it could be a lifestyle decision in some cases. Or it could be individuals looking to do something slightly different than work for some of the pure play management consulting groups.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. I think it is like, a lot of senior leaders have worked in certain roles for a certain amount of time. They've got loads of experience. They come out of a large corporate job and go, I want to do something different. I want to do something entrepreneurial. I don't want to start my complete own business, but I actually do want to impart knowledge, right? A lot of it about people is like, it's about giving back and also quite rewarding to share your experience, especially when you go into a business, you like the product, you like the CEO, you've been there, you've seen the struggles, and you're like, I know where you're going with this. Don't go down that route. You need to go down here. And I suppose that brings me to my next question, because if you walk into a business, and you said you do that discovery, what are the kind of triggers to go, that's a fractional person, that could be for a full-time person? Like, because they probably go through a list, don't they, of like, these are all my goals, strategic projects, and you'd be like, okay, that's what I can deliver. Where does that highlight?
Yeah, so I think some of the big things that you see where a fractional would be of use, it's normally to just get the company on the right sort of tracks. And if there's a lack of process or a lack of KPIs, or if you ask them questions about their data and they don't have the answers for you, you can definitely see that if a fractional went in to put in some dashboards to set the KPIs to get the business performing better, then you would need to be in for a period of time and then out again before passing over. Also, in some cases, when you go into some businesses and the vision or the mission of the business is only understood by the CEO, that's always normally quite a good telltale, because the CEO will say, yeah, this is what it is, this is how it's working, and then you'll go through and interview or speak to a few of the team, and they'll all give you different answers. And so when that's the case as well, that's normally a sign that you would need a bit of help from a fractional perspective. Versus, day-to-day stuff, if it's finance, or if it's operations, or if it's, an HR manager that's required. I mean, normally there's a clear need when a permanent member of staff is needed for that type of function.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think it's just to understand the business. The bit I'd really like to, and it might be for another conversation, to deeper in, like, I'm thinking about my own business, like businesses that have been going for a number of years, right? Often people see fractional, I think, and go, it's got to be a hyper growth business. It's got to be a business that's growing. It's got to be like something that's expanding. But is there a place for fractional in bigger enterprise businesses or in larger corporations? Because often they don't sometimes have the processes. It's hard to find the data. Like, can a fractional also come in and add value there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Rich, because a lot of people do, as you say, have this assumption that, you're going into a company that's had a bunch of funding, that you're going in to scale it up and to put the processes and to line the ducks up, et cetera, when in fact, the larger corporates do have a need for this as well. And I think savvy CEOs are the ones that are open to getting a fractional in, to saying, look, give the tires of my business a kick, to give it an audit of some description, and let me know where we can put some improvements in. And so, I actually did that with a company in Dubai. They've got 16,000 individuals. They've been running for 80 years. And the CEO, absolutely great guy, he said, right, okay, I want you to come into the business and give us a view about where we can make improvements, and then leave us with a checklist about what we need to do to implement that. So we don't want you to do the whole implementation, but we want you, as an experienced business leader that's worked in businesses, to look at maybe what we could do better. And so I went in for, was it 4 months? Sat with the various business heads, interviewed them all, gave advice then about restructuring the org chart, maybe looking at tweaking some of the KPIs, mentioned to them about their use of technology, et cetera. And a year later, it was great. He gave me some feedback. He said, that was super useful. He said, we've gone ahead and we've implemented this. And it's really bringing their business forward. And through the back of it, better productivity, less people leaving the business, et cetera. So, and that was all through the fact of going in and doing that. So that can be sometimes called, Rich, doing a transformation project.
Yes.
This was more of a basic audit, but the full thing would be some sort of a change management or transformation project. So absolutely, you can apply that to
the best job ever, to come in and say what's wrong. It's usually the board that does that for you every month.
Yeah.
And I mean, but also very rewarding, and the fact that you get to look back and actually see it's been implemented, right? I think that's also good. Um, I think, also for people coming into fractional, and this is again probably a question that for yourself, like, how do you make the change from being corporate to fractional? How do you have the mindset change to go from I'm no longer going to be here forever? Because it is a mindset change. It's very different to having done consulting myself. It's very different to come in and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest challenge that people face, and so going back to, I mentioned to you there about the portfolio careers group in Singapore. There's literally thousands of individuals that are looking at taking up and working on a fractional basis. So moving away from the corporate world. The number one challenge is basically doing business development. And I think that if you want to run your business as a lifestyle business, and if you've got an expectation that work will just fall on your lap, you're not going to be successful. So what I recommend to everybody is to write up a proper business plan, chart out how you're going to tackle your market. What is your market, for example? And then basically how you're going to address that. And you need to work systematically through that. You basically need to be a business development guy. You need to make BD calls, send out emails, send out proposals. You need to close deals, and then ultimately need to deliver deals. So I think that it's easier said than done. I think a lot of people have aspirations to do it, but unless genuinely you've got that entrepreneurial sort of bone in your body, where you're aware that you're maybe not going to make any money for a few months at a time, you're aware that you're going to have to really roll your sleeves up to do this, then it might not be for you. You can also look at this in another aspect, and if you've been in a senior managerial role within an organization, are you used to rolling up your sleeves and getting down and dirty to actually have 10 coffee meetings in a week, or to send out a whole bunch of proposals, or to chase and chase and chase to close something? So if you're not prepared to do that, then it might not be for you. So, that is something that does come up quite often. And again, going back to the portfolio careers group, they've actually got a program. It's the same with the fractional directory. They're programmed so that if you are interested in doing this, they'll take you through the journey. So they'll help you to basically get set up, the basics about getting your website set up, the company in place, but also what you need to do to attract clients and how to build a fractional career.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because a lot of people think, I know enough people that they'll just get given work, and it doesn't work like that. You have to speak to enough people. You've got to be able to explain what the benefit is. It is a sales role, right? We've all got to go out there and you've got to talk to people, and it doesn't happen overnight. Like, often there's some disappointments there where, you get to the end of the the process and they go, "Nah, sorry, we didn't get the sign off," or you were speaking to the person that didn't have the sign off the whole time. But I think the beauty of fraction is you should be dealing with a decision maker compared to contracting. I know there's recruitment companies out there now that are kind of focused to try and place fractional workers. And I know there's been platforms, like Expert 360 in Australia around, putting strategies. But I think that's more around the advisory piece, where you're advising rather than fractional. As you said, fractional is about doing, it's about solving a problem, it's about fixing. You're basically hiring a very experienced corporate mechanic in terms of what you can do. So I'm going to coin that, by the way. So Caledonian mechanics, but that's how you're going to come in. I think you've given us a really good overview of like what's happening in the market, where it's going. Two questions to kind of finish off. Firstly, a bit more about geography. You speak to CEOs every day. What are we going to be seeing in 2026 in terms of, markets, locations, one from a fractional lens, but also people just like some insights. You must know what's happening out there. So what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Rich, you're in a very good spot, to be honest with you, because going into 2026, I think talent, and that seems to be companies' biggest challenge. Now, it's talent in a number of different guises, really, because, looking at where should if it's a very large group, where should the permanent talent be sat? If you're talking about Asia, should it be Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, India? should people be hired more on a contract or a temp basis? What are they looking to deliver? So I think really in 2026 we're still seeing a further development on the whole talent landscape. I think certainly on the AI piece, unfortunately, I think some people are going to be losing jobs through to the use of AI tools. But then I think for a number of years, what we're seeing is that organizations are now directly hiring AI gurus. There's certain hedge funds that are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for people straight out of university that are well adapted in using AI tools. So I think that's another one. I think when we're looking at organizations and how they're developing and how they're performing, I think there's certainly opportunities for people that aren't using data to the best of their ability, for that to be an area of growth. Certainly, I speak to a lot of companies and they're saying, we don't know how to measure this, that, or the next thing. Can you implement some dashboards for us? And then using that in their management reporting. So that's another big one, really. But there's certainly on this fractional piece, you get fractional legal guys, fractional finance guys, fractional COO guys, guys that would normally, be quite expensive for businesses to hire on a permanent basis. It's now so much easier and quicker to make a decision to hire that type of person in. So I do really see the fractional piece picking up with some speed in 2026. I think the Singapore government have certainly put their stamp behind it. There's a number of pilots now that are going to be running out in Singapore in 2026. As I said to you before about the UAE, I think because of the growth of the economy there, the ease of hiring individuals in that space is going to be there as well. So I think both you and I, hopefully, touch wood, are
going to be busy. Yeah. No, I think that's really good insight. And I think that's where I've noticed it in Singapore is that they didn't quite understand, like large corporations just didn't know how to engage. They didn't know how to bring people in. And, they're like, well, we'll go to the consulting company because, the old adage, you don't get sacked if you go to IBM. Right. But actually what the person wants is, I don't need this big PowerPoint deck. I actually just need some more hands to get it solved. I need someone looking from a different lens. Because if you've got someone coming in from a different company, they bring knowledge of how it's been done differently. Like, you can do it a lot easier than this. So everyone's talking about we're going into 2026. If you're going to build a leadership team for 2026, what's the one strategic move you'd make now to balance the continuity, agility, and scale of the business? What would you do? Because everyone's doing their business plans at the moment.
We've walked right into that one, Richard. So I would basically, and if I was running any business, I would do this. I would seriously look at the idea of how do I ensure my business is going to be high performing in 2026? How do I ensure that it's structured? How do I ensure that my plan that I've put in place is going to be effective? So in doing that, I would obviously look at my current leadership team, but like the CEO I mentioned to you before, I wouldn't be afraid to actually tap onto fractional talent to look at seeing how you can accelerate that, or how you could do things differently, or how you could have a different view on how to build that out. So I think, going into 2026, I think that all organizations should consider at some point using fractional talent, be it for operations, HR, finance, legal, marketing, or technology.
I totally agree. And just to be clear, a fractional person can come in for one day in a month. It could be 2 days, or it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months. It's very flexible, right? It's down to the needs of the business and also the agreement with the person.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is the beauty of it, really, is you can either go two ways, really, is do little hours and then ramp it up as needed, or start off maybe going in 2-3 days a week and then petering that off so that you're going in less time. But that's the beauty. It's absolutely flexible. Traditionally, the rates are set by the group themselves, so there's a bit of flexibility within that. And normally it's on a retainer model, so you pay for your hours up front. So it works well for all parties, really.
So if you're a business out there, you're in the middle of the business plans, or you're halfway through your year, You can see some problems up ahead across people, talent, ATSs. How do they get in touch with Gerard? How do they engage Gerard Milligan and Caledonia Resources? What's the best way to contact you?
Oh, the easiest way is just caledonia-resources.com. So you get on my website and then you can ping me a message. So yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone. If you fancy a coffee to discuss your business, would be more than open to doing that. But no, an absolute pleasure today, Richard. It's great to see you, and
yeah,
really
great to talk to you too.
The fractional world.
I honestly, this year, probably speaking to senior executives about 6 or 7, looking at going into a fractional career. And the question is how I start, where do I go, what do I need to do? And I think you've really given some really valuable insights for someone that's made the transition, been highly successful. I love the EQ over IQ. I think that is absolutely key. And the fact is, you do have to be a salesperson. Sales is in everything we do. It's good. But thank you, Gerard. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I can't wait to speak to you again.